Week 6 of the college football season nearly upon us, and coming up at 3:30 p.m. Eastern on CBS Saturday, it's the 126th edition of the Deep South's oldest rivalry. Number 2 Georgia hosting Auburn between the hedges, and at 8 p.m. Eastern on CBS, the top-ranked Crimson Tide look to win their 30th straight October home game under Nick Saban and avenge last season's upset loss to Texas A&M. Also, TCU at Kansas, not only a battle of ranked teams, but the only game in D1 or D2 featuring 2 undefeated teams. Yeah, Kansas. And last week on this very segment, our Chip Patterson picked 6 games and hit 5 of them. The numbers don't lie, folks, and Chip has earned himself some more face time on the HQ to help us all win some money this weekend. And with that, we welcome in the host of the Cover 3 podcast, Chip Patterson. Now, Chip, I noticed you hit on that Alabama-Arkansas overplay last week. That was the SEC on CBS Game of the Week. Now, this Saturday, there's a day-night SEC doubleheader on CBS. Either of those games your SEC pick of the week this week?
Oh, without a doubt. And I understand that I needed some help. But cashing that over was fortunate, without a doubt. But look, they all count the same when they're winners, right? Mm-hmm. We will be looking at the 3:30 game. Yes, that is Georgia and Auburn. And we really want to bring out sweats because I believe that Georgia, which defensively has only been allowing 10.8 points per game, is going to absolutely stuff out any hope that Auburn is going to have of scoring points. I think that Auburn is not even going to get to double digits in this game. And I'll tell you, Russ, I was looking at it, and the full game under was initially my play, but I'm a little worried that Stetson Bennett and this Georgia offense, which has been spinning its wheels in the last 2 weeks, if they do find a rhythm, I'm afraid they're going to hit the gas, and they might hit this over themselves. So let's just go to the one thing that we feel confident about, and it's that Georgia's defense is going to absolutely crush Auburn's offense. Like I said earlier, they're only allowing 10.8 points per game this season. They are only allowing 4 touchdowns on the entire year. This is a unit that might not be historically great like last season, but it's still one of the best in the country. And I think that Auburn's offense, especially with their injury issues, is not even on the caliber of the average opponent that Georgia has faced. So we're just going with the Georgia defense as our best bet, which means it's an Auburn team total under.
All right, not a bad bet betting on that Dogs D. All right, turning to the ACC now. Clemson, the only unbeaten. 5 one-loss squads out there. Florida State and NC State, they're 2 of them. They're playing each other. But what's your top ACC wager this week?
Little off the radar, but back to the well, because the well is where you have winners. We went Duke against Virginia. Now we're going Duke against Georgia Tech because the number has not caught up to the Blue Devils. First-year coach Mike Elko has done a great job of 2 things. Number 1, he's found himself a quarterback in Riley Leonard who has been very effective in giving some life to this offense. And then number 2, as a former defensive coordinator at Texas A&M, Notre Dame, and Wake Forest, he has been able to solidify that Blue Devils defense. In fact, it has been only undefeated Kansas that has really been able to move the ball and score effectively. I think that Georgia Tech's win against Pitt last week is a huge red herring in the analysis and handicapping of this matchup. I think that Pitt, which outgained Georgia Tech, which played better in terms of a down-to-down basis, just happened to turn the ball over. Duke is not in that position right now. And one last piece of this, it is actually a revenge game because this is the moment where the David Cutcliffe era came crumbling down last season. Duke controlled the game from start to finish. Georgia Tech stole it. The same veterans that have bought in for Mike Elko also still want revenge for a game that they thought they should have won a year ago. So we're going to take a Duke, lay the short number because the power rating has not caught up to how good the Blue Devils are yet.
Back-to-back weeks taking Duke in football. That's saying something. Ohio State and Michigan, they're the class of the Big Ten again. Maryland looks kind of legit, at least on offense. But when you look around at this week's Big Ten slate, where are you seeing dollar signs?
Not a lot of games, right? The big spread with Ohio State and Michigan State. I don't want any part of that. Michigan and Indiana, you don't want to sweat that either. Let me take you to a place where we've got so much certainty. You're just going to put it on like a comfy coat here in the fall. We're going with the under in Illinois and Iowa. Illinois legitimately has one of the best defenses in the entire country. And I think that the way that this game is going to play out, the clock is going to burn, 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 because Illinois likes to run the ball with Chase Brown. They like to lean on their defense. Iowa, we know, has one of the better defenses in the country while also having a incredibly inept offense. And so I look at these two teams and I think about the way this game is going to play out, and it is going to be one of those games where the winner probably has 17 points. Since the beginning of last season, we've only had about a handful of games where Iowa has been in them, and there's been a total that has been 36 points or under. I mean, this is a team that just leads to these low 31, 29, 27 point totals. And now we introduce an elite defense like Illinois has. I know the number's low, but it's low for a reason. You take the under and you cash it.
There you go. All right, Kansas, big time now. Partly because they're 5-0, but as a result of that, now you're starting to get questions about how long their Wisconsin native head coach is going to remain in Lawrence, Kansas. And now they're talking about stuff about the Kansas football team, which is amazing. Please tell me you're looking at the TCU-Kansas game this week.
Without a doubt, you have to, because there's so much value in taking two of the most productive offenses in the entire country and taking the over. I mean, I could put together a nice little whiplash parlay for you if you want to take that under in Iowa and Illinois and the over in TCU and Kansas. Because in terms of yards per play, TCU and Kansas are two of the best in the entire country. And I look defensively at Kansas. I, throughout the season, have identified that as a potential weakness. TCU, if Dylan Gabriel had been healthy for that entire Oklahoma game, I think the Sooners would have been able to get theirs as well. TCU wins. I'm not going to say that it was by any chance an asterisk for the Horned Frogs, but I do think that both of these teams are just going to get into one of these shootouts where the defenses are just trying to catch their breath by the end of the game. And that is going to lead to a total that is going to soar well into the 70s, maybe into the 80s. I just think that the two styles of play that you have between TCU and Kansas, the two quarterbacks that you have in Max Duggan and Jalen Daniels, it's just going to be one of those games that gets silly. I mean, a 28 points for a single team in a single quarter is not anything crazy from either one of these. So it might come in fits and spurts. Don't sweat too much if it's only 10-7 at the end of the first quarter, because there's so much explosiveness between TCU and Kansas that by the end of the game, we will be well over this total.
I like it. A pick for all kinds of college football fans. If you like the defense first, then you're looking at Illinois, Iowa. If you like an offensive explosion, there's that TCU, Kansas. One more conference pick here. What are you looking at in the Pac-12?
I'm going to be going to Oregon State and Stanford, and I understand that that's not necessarily the most high-profile game. USC, Washington State's very interesting. Can the Cougars give the Trojans some problems? But I want to give you a winner right here. And Stanford has been getting off to horrendous starts recently. It's a reason why head coach David Shaw might be under fire from some people around that program, because in the last 3 games, Stanford has been outscored in the first half 83-24. What does that say about the way this Stanford program prepares? What does this say about the way this Stanford program is able to come out and execute in the early stages of the game? And that clearly they've got a big setback with E.J. Smith, their star running back, ruled out for the season a couple weeks ago. But I still think that it speaks to how Stanford has been making these margins look better with second-half touchdowns when the game is already out of reach. Oregon State, on the other hand, a very quality opponent, elite offensive line. Chance Nolan in this ground game are going to be able to get up and move. I just think when we've got a first half total under a touchdown, when we've got a solid Beavers team, and we've got that trend, I'll say it one more time. In the last 3 games, Stanford has been outscored in the first half 83-24. The bad start in Cardinal are going to lead us to cash in this Oregon State first half ticket.
Makes you wonder how it's just -4 there for the first half in that one. All right, last week, as part of your 5-1 week, you hit on your off-the-radar pick. That was the over for Texas San Antonio and Middle Tennessee. Which game outside of the Power 5 strikes your fancy this week?
We're just going barely outside the Power 5 to the American Athletic Conference for some action. as we're going to see Tulane taking on ECU. And Willie Fritz is another coach that as more of these jobs come open, you're going to start to say, hey, is now the time to give Willie Fritz a look at being able to make that jump to the Power 5? But it's not the potential resume game that has me looking at Tulane. Two reasons. Number one, this is a Tulane team that is battle tested. We just saw them win in overtime against Houston. We saw them take down Kansas State earlier this season. I mean, they did absolutely lay an egg against Southern Miss. But I think compared to what ECU's profile has been thus far, the Green Wave have faced better opponents and have a similar type record. Now, the second piece of this, and this is where it really gets into the X's and O's, that ECU's defense really struggled with Navy earlier this season in an overtime loss. And while Tulane does not run the traditional Service Academy triple option, it is based on some of those triple option concepts, which brings about my favorite term in football, eye discipline. If your linebackers and your safeties are not good at knowing where the ball is, knowing where the pitch man is, then you can be susceptible to explosive plays. So with ECU struggling with Navy earlier this season, with Tulane riding high, I'm going to lay that short number with the Green Wave.
My favorite former Green Wave quarterback, Sean King. He probably is going to like that pick. Chip Patterson, host of the Cover 3 podcast, thank you so much for the picks. And to recap, Chip likes Georgia to hold Auburn to single digits. He likes Duke giving 3.5 at Georgia Tech, Illinois and Iowa on the under, TCU and Kansas on the over, and Oregon State giving 4 in the first half to Stanford. And it's an SEC on CBS doubleheader coming your way Saturday, starting at 3:30 p.m. Eastern. It's Auburn at Georgia. The nightcap should be quite a spectacle in College Station. Top-ranked Alabama taking on Texas A&M. Pre-game, halftime, post-game coverage right here on CBS Sports HQ for the SEC on CBS this Saturday.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.